Hello, my name's Jerry, and I'm here with the Expert Advisory Group for the Social Work with Older People Research Project. We're in one of our regular meetings, and we just want to say a bit about why this research matters. I'm going to start off, first of all, with us hearing from Graham, our group's poet.
We are looking to create a new beginning, albeit built upon the social worker's present craft, measuring the older person's sense of well-being when with them a social worker interacts. It's bred a research project of repute, allowing Birmingham and Bristol universities to ply their skill, assembling a stakeholder range that avoids dispute, allowing all parties to profit their goodwill. Pilot study areas measured two, one in the West Midlands, the other a West Country place. Geared to start in June 2022, as it unfolds, watch this space. In May, with the two research assistants in place and ethical approval nearly there, we've agreed it's people, not case, and meaningful engagement, the yardstick of measure. Equality, diversity and inclusion are to the fore. Accepting local demographics hold sway. Incapacity allowed for. It really will be everybody's day.
Next, we're going to hear from June about the importance of keeping older people at the centre of research.
Keeping older people at the centre of research. And I do that from very much a personal experience because I am an older person. And central to my blog that I've written, I talk about social work needing to embody the same principles in research as in practice. These values are embedded in the social work domains found in the professional capabilities framework. The three specifically I'm thinking of are values and ethics, diversity and equality, and the third one is rights, justice, and economic well-being. Fundamental to these principles is the need to respect older people in debates of choice and control, in issues about maintaining our independence with support. There will be different agendas which could crowd out the older person's agenda. Listening to the voice of older people is crucial. To do this, it is vital that our voices lead from the start of the research project in the design. As in services, this is the only way to ensure that the research is needs-led rather than service-led. I'm very pleased that the Social Work with Older People Research Project sought to do this by involving older people in the Expert Advisory Group in the two locations where the research was being carried out. In our group, we were able to influence the language used, which may avoid it as much as possible buying into the stereotypes of aging. I believe we are ensuring an empowerment and strengths-based focus is being maintained in the research. It is more of a challenge to get views of older people at a more operational level. For example, who do you ask? Bearing in mind that the research involves the perspectives of social workers and older people who are care providers and care recipients, the views can be sought through the structures involving all groups. So the professionals can act as enablers or gatekeepers to the older people engaging in the research. Researchers have to be mindful of the processes that enable impartiality and reliability of evidence. As part of our discussions, we question the early close relationship between the researchers and the professionals, the social workers. But we were reassured this was necessary to enable the process. Only by developing trust between the researchers and the social workers could the bedrock of trust also develop between older people and researchers. But we feel that it was important to raise this potential for overly close bonding between two partners in the relationship so that the other partners did not feel excluded. The project brief and the views of the expert advisory group were coterminous, particularly with regard to value-based practice. For example, there was much synergy with emphasis on empathetic practice. Other interesting practices we identified included mindfulness, loving kindness, and common humanity, which are all components of compassionate mind practice. We hope that attention will be paid to whether this practice is surfacing in the research. The expert advisory group wants the research to test for the use of power in social work relationships at the levels of personal, cultural, and institutional. This is particularly important in social work with older people who are subject to legislation which can deny them their rights, justice, and economic well-being. I'm thinking about the Mental Capacity Act, the Mental Health Act, and legislation concerned with safeguarding, such as guardianship and power of attorney. Social workers must work with integrity and respect. Before closing, I would like to draw your attention to our role in critical analysis. Our group was involved in reading documents, and we found some language could be interpreted as depersonalizing. One example which comes to mind is the use of the word cases instead of people. That is still a battle to be won, as case or cases is a common term in the research field. There are other examples where we translate it into plain speak. In the areas of communication and engagement, the expert advisory group contributed much to the information for older people and carers. We also refined the documentation for the recruitment and selection of the research posts. Our input into the questions at both levels probably humanized the processes.
Next, we're going to turn to Reshma and Julia, who are talking about how the expert advisory group keeps things real.
Some of the other things that we were concerned about as part of the steering group was to make sure that diversity is represented. So we were asking questions about diversity, who are the people that you're working with, and so again, holding people to question, asking questions and offering advice to keep older people again at the centre, making sure that the research is co-produced. So we wanted to really make sure that even locally, because we were meeting every 3 months, and we wanted to make sure that locally both sites were very, very different, and that local needs were taken into account. I believe, and I'm sure the other group members believe as well, that we've been a critical friend to the research more than anything else, and holding people to account. Making sure that the language is right at all times. Making sure that we show the good, bad, and the messy, really.
We made sure the research was genuine, shaping messages, and giving a stronger voice collectively. the group brings diversity and inclusion. Older people are always at the centre of everything, and we asked researchers not to use the word case and not show older people as victims or heroes. Carers could also have their voice heard.
And we're now going to hear from all the members of the group about why the research matters to them.
We know increasingly, if we are looking to attract more funding, we have to back that with evidence. We also know that more than 50% of the expenditure for social support in this country is geared towards the needs of older people. I'm one of them. I'm an 83-year-old without sight. So it is pertinent to me. This research covers a really valuable field. We know there is support work, but to what, for older people, but to what extent does it meet need? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? We also know that we have uncovered a lot of new things. It is clear we have, but equally it also confirms what we also know, that many older people have no comprehension of what a social worker interaction with them will give them in sense of their well-being. We also know, have it confirmed, that older people dislike the duty rota social worker because the critical need to develop a relationship is not there. It is much too haphazard. But equally, much has come from this. It's a kaleidoscope of data that's been collected, and hopefully good things will arise from this. And I'm very happy to be a member of the advisory group as part of that process.
The research matters to me because the research findings demonstrate good practice when working with older people. And I feel that also social workers should understand the complexities of working with older people that Jane has alluded to and spoke about. For me, it's especially important because it will become a good teaching tool for students in practice, especially for us to use when we are working within universities. Furthermore, the research, as Julie has spoken about, has clearly been co-produced, and our views as the expert advisory group have been taken on board.
This project has been particularly useful in terms of learning about the contribution of practitioners nationally, and I feel the learning that we've gained in regarding the practice has been particularly useful also, and it will be useful for future practice and for future practitioners.
A social worker of 17 years experience with older people and currently a carer. So it's been exciting being involved with this group. There's so much research with children and families, and I'm thinking particularly of the Monroe report, which looked at children and families and what children and families thought of their social workers. It's somewhat lacking the research with older people, and that's why it's been really exciting being a co-opted member in this group. So I'm really looking forward to the feedback from this project and looking at how that can be incorporated in my social work practice with older people.
My personal experiences as a carer for both of my elderly parents over a period of about 20 years or longer, and also as a Health Watch volunteer, indicate that social worker input does not always result in a good outcome for care users. Research matters because if you don't know why something isn't working, How can you improve it?
I just want to say that this research is extremely important to me as an older person, and as an older person who has been deprived of liberty in my life experience. I define myself as a survivor of the psychiatric system, and that denotes that deprivation of liberty that occurred in my life history.
I think the reason is threefold in terms of why this research matters for me. Firstly, because I'm a full-time carer for my mother and my sister with learning disability. Also myself being an older adult as well now. And thirdly, being a practitioner, social work practitioner for the last 25 years, I have worked with the adults and older adults with the mental health problems. I believe that the older people and the disabled people are expert in their own lives. And as social workers, they don't get to pick and choose the people they are actually working with and they're helping. And which is why the social workers are constantly have to develop their knowledge, their cultural competencies to identify the strengths of those they are working with, and they are helping to be effective in their practice. And this also would actually help them what works well and where the improvement is needed, and also find the appropriate intervention strategies for the people they are working with. And I think it's the research is one of the tools that they can actually use to look at and reflect on their own practice and also the findings from that research. So, and I'm quite excited to be part of this research project as a member of the advisory group. Thank you.
I've experienced the value of a good social worker who helped my mother when she was transitioning from moving her from her home into residential care. The social worker built a rapport from day one and recorded the views of both my mother and myself as her carer. We were given clarification and reassurance of her care, which alleviated further stress to the situation. My mother had no wish to leave her home, yet fully understood the safety concerns she faced. With time, my mother settled into her new home and received good care. As her daughter, I was released from my caring responsibilities that were beginning to affect my mental health. I was confident that my mother would receive the appropriate care with annual reviews, and it gave me the hope that she would have a better future. I believe all elderly people should be helped and respected in such a way.
And now we're going to ask each member of the expert advisory group to say something about what good social work with older people looks like for them.
Good social work for older people, for me, rests upon what the outcome is. As I first talked about my engagement in this advisory group in the first place, that is, was it good, bad, or indifferent? In truth, it's what outcome we are seeking. And for me, that means the person being served really feels their well-being is being addressed. And well-being is a very broad concept, but it is important that people feel that they're getting the best outcome that can be given to them in partnership with working with the social worker who is doing all they can to assist them. And that really does mean the person being served is at the centre of the service. As we've heard already from other members of this group, we talk about people, not cases. We really personalise the support we are giving. And that for me is what I would like to see arise from this research, or the need from this research, that we then go forward with assessing how we meet that properly. Thank you.
What concession work looks like for me, for older people, would be social workers need to show that, they are actively listening, that they are acting on what the older person is saying, and also reading in between the lines to what they're not saying. I think it's really important that there is lots of reassurance and people are given lots of different choices. Most importantly, I also think that working with older people means understanding complex systems and legislation and the complexities between health and social care funding. The social worker needs to explain that in plain language and help to actually go through the whole journey and stay with them right to the end.
In terms of practice and what is good, I feel it's essential that practitioners work in a manner that is timely and with clarity. I think in writing and to explain the processes that are involved. I feel that the processes involved in currently at times for users can be difficult, and it's important that we are able to explain the processes clearly.
My 87-year-old mother was saying to me after her recent hospital admission for 3 weeks in August 2023 this year that she wished she could have seen a social worker while she was admitted. There was nobody there to listen to her, only medical professionals that spoke over her. They had no regard for her mental capacity and assumed she had no capacity and assumed that she had dementia. So there was nobody to look at co-production and her discharge plan. There was nobody to see her at the heart of her assessment, and she wished oh so much that social workers had a greater presence in this particular hospital and NHS trust. So from that, I'm just assuming that the picture may be very similar throughout the country, and therefore this research is so important to actually highlight what the experiences are from these two local authorities so that we can gain a better picture of the relationship between social work practice and the individual older person that we're all trying to help.
What does good social work look like for me? I think that social worker needs to understand that for the care user, the situation is a crisis. It's highly emotional, and it's not a case or a problem to be resolved, but it's a person in need of emotional and practical support. I think a social worker needs to be able to establish good rapport, have empathy and insight into the client's needs and their capacity, giving due consideration to the potential memory loss affecting their responses. The social worker needs to have sympathy, patience, awareness, and also respect for the care user, even though their views or requirements may always not seem logical. They are still very important to them and the outcomes they're seeking. The social worker needs to be a good communicator using simple, plain language and provide clear explanations of options or the reasons why preferences may not be achievable. There is evidence to show that where this has been done well, that clients are much happier to accept that they may not get their preferred outcome. And that's leads to a much happier overall end result. care users, I think care users should be allowed to involve family members or friends in the assessment process, because it's easy for people going through what may be a stressful interview to forget important issues and things, which may result in an inadequate care plan. Also, I think it's vitally important for social worker continuity, for the benefit of the care user. I think implementation of a care plan should not be a trigger for case closure. Follow-up should be built into the system, because care plans can become obsolete as the care user's condition, which is never static, can deteriorate or change. And sometimes the care provider performance may fluctuate and become unsatisfactory or inadequate. Where any of these changes occur after the closure of the case, the care user is very isolated, and starting from scratch leaves them feeling vulnerable and demoralised. So I think ongoing monitoring would provide a lifeline for care users, especially when they experience a dramatic change in their life or needs, and would maintain peace of mind should they face a crisis. Thank you.
I'm coming to you as a survivor of the psychiatric system, particularly, because that has been my particular health and social care route. And I would like to say to social workers, give them a message that they might not feel comfortable with. And that is, I do not want them to be leaders. I know there's quite a lot of emphasis on leadership, but I don't want a social worker who would attempt to lead me on any decisions. For me personally, I would like a social worker, I would want you to be an enabler and a supporter. That is the best way to actually learn from me what I would like. It means you need and will listen to me. And some of the things I might say may not make a lot of sense, but there are ways in which you can work with that and find the kernels of truth that need to be found, basically need to be achieved. I actually have quite a rich history of colonialism. I might say things that you don't understand. Talk to me. And I can tell you about those things that happened. I can tell you about riots and fires that were happening outside my house when I was only 3. You won't get that unless you actually are enabling me to speak. And that actually would have helped me a lot in my journey of recovery over the past 30 years, I'd say. So thank you.
I think for me, the good social work practice is mainly based on the good listening skill, the active listening, and also communicating directly with the people you're working with. I think it's also helps the person comfortable with that person, and also displaying your respect and sensitivity and not judging the person, the way they are, the way they live, because obviously social workers visit them and see the older people in a different situations and different settings and different context. I think it all depends on how actually they work with the people in helping them to improve the outcome in their lives, regardless of their culture, race, gender, and disability, and obviously living in their own environment.
The research to me means understanding the role of the social worker and sharing evidence of improvements of care. I believe emphasis should be on personalised care for everyone, providing a safety net for emergencies or crisis, building a rapport with client and carer's family, recording the true views of all people concerned, offering relevant help and information to alleviate stress, and to provide information of any community help nearby, especially for those people who are on their own without family or friends.